administering water rights, groundwater well permitting, hydrography, and dam safety in the San Juan and Dolores River basins. So join me in welcoming Rob to our event.
Well, thanks for inviting me. I appreciate the opportunity, and it's always good to get out in the real world and talk to people and hopefully catch people up on a little bit on water rights. And that's our biggest focus with the Division of Water Resources is the water rights aspect, and the one that touches probably the most individuals. And we're talking individuals, we're talking people with their individual water rights, we're talking people with more of the kind of corporate end of water rights, the district, like Mike Preston's involved with, MVI, like Brandon's involved with. So big to small, water rights, touch us all. The cities have water rights portfolios that they, run their systems with. So, but what I'm going to do today is talk a little bit about the history of water development in the West. I'm going to keep it brief, but I'm going to, give you an idea of how water and water rights developed in the West. Talk a little bit about the water rights scheme that developed in Colorado, and then drill down a little bit further and take that to a practical place like the Dolores and how it developed over time. So that's kind of the focus of the talk today. And here we go. So, so as everyone knows, Colorado has many competing uses for water. Irrigation and stock use were probably the first uses, and mining the first uses in the West. Those at the times they were first developed really didn't compete a whole lot for water. Mining was up in the mountains, irrigation, stock uses were down in the valleys, and there wasn't too much conflict. When I say conflict, competition for water, but nonetheless, you can see a pretty long list here, and I think just about all of these probably are used in this area alone, let alone the whole state and the whole West. Competing for water not only happens within the state of Colorado, it happens, we're the headwater state for 19 states around the West. Water flowing out of Colorado touches up to 19 states. So through the years, you can see some of the numbers involved here. We're talking quite a bit of water. This is a snake diagram that's been developed through the years. It kind of gives the average annual amount that's leaving the state. You can see over there on the Colorado, 4.5 million acre feet. So you get this relative idea of the amounts that are produced and leave the state. Down here in the San Juan and Dolores, the San Juan making up the San Juan, the Piedra, the Pine, the Animas, and the Mancos, about 1.8 million acre feet. Dolores a little bit less, but nonetheless, that's the area of my focus because I'm the division engineer for Division 7, which is that southwestern part of the state, essentially everything that flows into the Dolores and the San Juan. Just to give people comparative numbers here, I stole from Mike's website the capacity, the maximum capacity of McPhee Reservoir is 308,000 acre feet of water. You can compare that to some of the numbers. So more than if you drained McPhee would be what goes out the Dolores, and multiples of that going out the San Juan, and the active capacity is much, much less. But nonetheless, you get a feel for how much water we're talking about when you can compare it to something like McPhee. So you'll also notice that the majority of the water goes west. There's the population to the east and the water to the west, which we all know what that results in Colorado. With all those competing states, we've had compacts, which is this more or less agreements between various states and at various times through the last century on how to deal with that water. The first agreements go back to the 1920s with the Colorado River Compact. And one that's near and dear to our heart locally, certainly for myself, is the La Plata River Compact, which divides the water between New Mexico and Colorado from the La Plata River. But affecting this area are certainly the Colorado River Compact and the Upper Colorado River Compact. Those are, all of these describe how agreements have been made between the states, and in order to get those agreements ratified, you have to actually go to the U.S. Congress, and it becomes federal law. It's actually state law, all these compacts, so we're obligated to live up to those and try to administer those within the state. How do we fit into that picture? So Division 7 is where the box is there. When you talk about the Colorado River Compact, it essentially divided the drainage of the Colorado River into the lower basin and the upper basin. You can denote it by the two colors. The dividing point is Lee's Ferry, just below Lake Powell, and that's actually the regulatory point for the Colorado River Compact. And the reason Lake Powell is there is actually to help the upper basin states comply with the lower basin requirements for delivery of water. It's our bucket, our savings account for water to the lower basin. It allows us to continue to develop, have a little excess in that reservoir. When we need to, we drain it out. As everyone knows, we're kind of in a drought, extended drought period right now, certainly an extreme drought right now this year, and that bucket has actually helped us deliver to the lower basin without falling out of compliance with that the Colorado River Compact. San Juan and Dolores River Basins, which is Division 7, contributes about 2.5 million acre feet, which is about 28% of Colorado's contributions to the Colorado River system. And it's estimated that about 325,000 acre feet is consumed by Colorado. The rest is going out of state. Now you saw that in that other diagram that showed how much is heading out of state from the San Juan and the Dolores Basins. I'm going to give just a little history, and I know this is real small, but I'm going to just point out a few things. And by the way, there's a couple of more pages I'm not going to touch on. But, you know, if you ever want to see this kind of thing, it's interesting. The history, the path to where we are right now. So how did this prior appropriation system start? In other words, I have a water right. My water right is more senior to your water right. Well, it all started in this first arrow right here back in California during the gold rush, the placer mining that happened back in the gold rush days. A couple of, a series of miners on a river system were placer mining. You can see they just blowing water everywhere to mine out the gold. And it actually went to a Supreme Court case where the senior water user got a better right. He was there first. He was mining with the water. Someone else came upstream and started interfering with his use, and the system started there. So that was that happened essentially in the 1849 kind of era. Prior to that, you have the early 1800s when the United States started developing the West. It wasn't until that gold rush days in California that water right system started to establish. Just to give a point, that little star right there in 1852 is when the oldest water right in Colorado was established, and that was done by the Hispanic settlers coming up the Rio Grande and establishing a ditch over in the San Luis Valley. So that's 1852. Colorado's gold rush happened in 1859, and in the same kind of problems happened, with the competition for water. And the legislature, the territorial legislature, got into the act and essentially started to address that kind of thing and applied that same appropriation system, prior appropriation system, into the 1860s. And then, here in 1876, we established statehood. They'd already been using water. Many people were starting to irrigate even prior to that and using it for mining. But in 1876, statehood was established, And the prior appropriation system was actually put into the state constitution at statehood. So you'll actually find that language that designates us as a prior appropriation state. At 1879, there was some legislation enacted by the state that said, you know, we're going to set up a court system to adjudicate, or in other words, judge how the water system works and who had what appropriation date. Or in other words, who was prior, who was senior to everyone else. So they started to set up that system in 1879, and they knew there was going to be conflict, so they assigned water commissioners to each of the basins in order to regulate that sort of thing. In 1881, the state engineer position was created to work with the courts and administer water rights statewide. So it's been around for a long time. I'll point out one more thing. In 1922 is actually when it became a basin-wide problem. They recognized that mostly here again in California, there was development down on the Colorado River, lower end. There was a lot of irrigation starting down there in the Yuma area and in the Imperial Valley. Those guys were concerned about what was going to be happening upstream. They recognized the problem, and off they went to try to figure out how they could deal with that. Soon to be Herbert Hoover was involved with the negotiations of that that Colorado River Compact, and it just so happens at the same time, and actually at the same meetings, the La Plata River Compact was enacted. It reflects almost the same tone of the compact, but here's some more of those important dates on water rights development, and I don't dare do that to you today or we'd be here till tomorrow. Anyways, here we'll highlight it a little bit more. And so in 1876, Colorado's Constitution instituted the prior appropriation system. So what did that do? Those decreed, in other words, those that went to court and got documents from the court and put their water to use first, so they had to do both at that time, were entitled to get their water during times of shortage. So here came that first in time, first in right. So publics, along with in that prior appropriation doctrine, is the idea that public waters must be used for a beneficial use. So you can't just take it out of the river and spread it out, run it through your property or whatever. You had to have a beneficial use in order to have a valid appropriation. The appropriator can divert only the amount that they have a present need for. So I can't just keep dumping water into my ditch even though I don't have any need. Let's say I'm haying or something like that. I don't have a right to just keep on taking water. I also don't have a right to take an excess amount for my need. I don't need 10 cubic feet per second to irrigate 5 acres of land. So that's the idea behind that part of the appropriation system. Also, it was established that a water right is a property right and can be bought and sold separate from the land. Many old water rights have been purchased by cities to beef up their portfolio with very senior water rights so that they don't run out in times of shortage. Water rights are, bought and sold between property owners in order to, increase the amount of irrigated land, that sort of thing. So, and knowing human nature, everyone's seen this photo before, I'm sure. Probably a little staged, but nonetheless, the idea gets across. So, just a few years later, like we just spoke about, in 1879, Colorado established the Water Commissioner position to distribute water in priority based upon the principle of first in time, first in right. So what is a water right? A water right is a court-decreed right to divert and use the public's water under the priority system. And so what in practical terms is that? It's a water right consists of certain elements. You must establish a location, a structure location we talked about. It's either a pointed diversion, a heading of a ditch, a pump, the head gate, the well location, that sort of thing. A source of water. This is all part of the water right. What makes up the water right? Your source can be if you're Mike on the Dolores, you know, his is the location of the dam. If you're Gary, it's the McPhee River. So it can even be tributaries within those. Your right to water is only those sources that contribute to that location. The priority date, what the court said was the date that you. It's a combination of two things. It's the date you went to court to get it established. It's also the date that you appropriated that water, which means either the date that you told everyone, I plan to take water from this point for this purpose, that's in this amount, or it's the date you actually went out there and did it. So you can actually not have diverted the water yet to establish a water right, just inform everyone in the court and through a court process that you plan to do that. That's what establishes your priority. The amount for a direct flow right, which means you're going to take it directly off the river and use it right now, is usually done in a cubic feet per second, a flow rate, in other words. Or if you're one of the reservoirs, you get a right in a volume, you know, 1,000 acre feet, you know, 100 acre feet, whatever the number is. And I think we were just talking about Mike's. I think he's got an appropriation for a few 100,000 acre feet of water. So anyways, purpose of use. You have to identify what you're going to use that water for. Stock, irrigation, municipal storage, place of use. I'm going to irrigate that field. I'm going to, you know, supply that city. I'm going to, you know, generate power here, you know, so that place of use is a part of the element, and there could be other conditions that the court or some opposer to the water right application comes up with. So, but that's what a water right truly consists of when you say, you know, what is your water right? These are the things they're asking you. These are actually court documents, and this is the simplest one I could find. There's many like this, and then there's many very complicated water rights. But I'll just point out, this is the actual court document, stamped, dated, court case numbers up toward the top there. This one you can see right over here. It's called the McAllister Pump. You can see it was Kendall and Deborah McAllister that from Pagosa Springs that asked for this water right. This is the process at the end, by the way. The application came first. This is the court decree in the end. There's a location. It's in the northwest of the section of the township of the range kind of thing. And so this one is a source. It's straight off the San Juan River. It's a very small one. It's 0.1 CFS, which, Marty, what is that, about 45 gallons a minute? So just to give you a feel for how much this is, they're asking for. They're talking about irrigating 2.5 acres of landscape, garden, orchards, that sort of thing. And they even give the lots that they're going to do it on. It's an appropriation. In other words, they haven't done it. It's a conditional decree, which means it's conditional on other things to happen to perfect the water right. So the appropriation date for this is a conditional water right was May 31st, 2005. That's probably when they went to court and notified everybody they're going to do this, because they haven't done it yet because it's a conditional water right. And then there's a court date associated with that too. The combination again of the court date and the appropriation date make your priority in the priority system. A couple other things that are said and typically said is the division engineer might ask you to put in some measuring equipment or make reports on occasion. And it also says that it'll be administered in priority of all other water rights on the San Juan. So it doesn't affect, you know, the Dolores or the Mancos or anyone over here. Just the San Juan River, signed off on the water judge. And in this case, they were asked to produce a map as well as they gave a description of where they're going to be irrigating, but sometimes a map is associated with it as well. So here again, what does a court decreed water right give you? It gives you a spot in line. In other words, here's Mr. Senior, and that's Mr. Junior at the very end. And actually, that guy at the end might not even have a water right. And in Colorado, you can take water without having a water right. You just are at the end of the line. So in other words, as the rivers run short, he's the first one out. It just establishes your place in the line. That's what a water right does. But what it does is confine you to what you said you were going to do and what the court approved. So the guy at the end can essentially, because he has no water right, he can use it for near anything, as long as he's not wasting it and that kind of thing. But then again, he's the first one out. So what did I say? Oh, remember seniors first. So what does the Colorado Division of Water Resource do? You'll also might hear it as the Office of the State Engineer. That was established way back when. They called it the Office of the State Engineer. Its mission is to distribute the waters of Colorado in accordance with the court decrees and the laws of the state. That's the water rights end of it. And then to ensure that dams and wells are safely and properly constructed. So this is what water commissioners do, this first statement. They distribute the waters in accordance with all those decrees and whatnot. And I think in the room here, we've got Marty Robbins, who's the water commissioner for McElmo, and he's the lead water commissioner for this area. Doug Pickering, which is the water commissioner for the Dolores and Disappointment. And we even have a retired one, Bob. You left us in one piece. That's good. But that's their job, and it's a big job, and there's no doubt they're on their toes, especially a year like this, and I'll tell you why. Because this is Montezuma County, and it doesn't even quite get all of Montezuma County, and it doesn't get up into the Disappointment. Cortez, just to give you an idea, is here, Mesa Verde, and then on over to Mancos. Each one of those dots is a water right. And sometimes they're as simple, I should say as straightforward as that one we were looking at, and sometimes they're not. And they might have lots of conditions. And so my question is, Marty, what does this one say? He has to know details on every water right in the area. And so, and see how this one affects this one, and that one affects that one, and on and on and on and on and on and on. Because there's juniors, there's seniors, there's seniors, there's juniors. It's a complicated world. And just wanted to give you guys a feel for what water commissioners contend with. And when things aren't going right, we have a sheriff's deputy that comes out and helps. So sorry, I don't mean to keep backing up into you. So what is water administration? So here's a previous water commissioner over on the Plata doing part of his work. He's just adjusting a head gate. I think this might be the one near Hesperus. But so water rights administration, and I mention this stuff because we say this and the rest of the world looks at us like, what are you talking about? Water rights administration to us is applying the doctrine of prior appropriation. There again, what are you saying? It's applying the first in time, first in right to the real world. So there's a call on the river, meaning somebody isn't getting their water. It might require the shutting off of a junior water right when the river is low in order for a senior to get its water. And that's what they essentially do. Anybody can stay in as long as the people senior to them are getting their rightful water, and they're not, but by the same token, they can't be wasting, take more than their decreed amount, those sort of things. They also administer reservoirs. There's what we call filling guidelines. There's the idea through the years has been developed that irrigators need water in the summer. So you want reservoirs to fill as early in the year as possible during the early runoff. And so there's these filling guidelines. There's also release guidelines for, you can't just release water for anything. You have to release it for your decreed purposes. There's some exceptions to that, but generally that's the way it works. If you told the water court and the public that you're going to use your reservoir for this and this and this, and then you use it for that and that and that, you're going to get a little bit, penalized for that. In other words, you might miss out on some water that you thought you might otherwise be rightfully owner of. But anyways, and then there's these things called augmentation plans, and I won't dwell on what augmentation plans, but it was a concept that came around in the 60s and got into law, and the idea behind that was a system to where people very junior, and in most cases they were the cities and whatnot, because we didn't want to see cities drying up, could keep their water even though they were out of priority. And most of the time what was done was releases of water down the river so wells could stay on, because there's an impact from wells to the river. That was basically what the augmentation plans were set up for. They've gotten very complicated from there, but the idea was a plan implemented to prevent injury to more senior water rights. So in Division 7, this is how we do our job, or at least the staff to do our job. We got about 12 people in Durango, essentially. It's not perfect, but and then we've got Pagosa Springs, an office in Pagosa Springs, and then one here in Cortez. There's a division engineer, an assistant division engineer, program assistant, 2 hydrographers, which those are the guys that keep the gauging stations going. They also do measurements to make sure that some other administrative structures like flumes or whatnot are operating correctly. But they do the water measurement and keep the gauges running accurately. We have an augmentation coordinator, which does a lot of water accounting kind of stuff, especially on the reservoirs. And then we have 12 water commissioners. I forgot to put one more person on here, and that's our dam safety engineer. Isn't that nice of me to leave him off? But anyway, so we've got these folks down in this part of the state. There's similar staffs in 6 other locations around the state. There's division offices in Greeley, Pueblo, Alamosa, Glenwood Springs, Montrose, and Steamboat Springs. So very similar staffs around the state. There's actually the same number of water commissioners today than there was 100 years ago. There's a few more other staff, but the water commissioner numbers, I think, are right about the same. There's essentially one water commissioner, for the most part, one water commissioner for each drainage basin. For instance, Rusty Krangle is over on the Mancos, and then Marty here on McElmo, but Doug we gave two rivers to, and we treat him badly, I guess. But anyways, that's how we're set up. To add to our mix, I showed you some of those compacts that affect our work. We've got, and this is just here in Division 7, but we've got 4 interstate compacts that affect our work and then affect your water rights. The Colorado River Compact, the La Plata River Compact, Upper Colorado River Compact, the Animas La Plata River Compact. There's a large trans-mountain diversion that heads out of Division 7 and over the Continental Divide. There's 2 Indian reservations, Southern Ute Mountain. I'm telling you things you guys already know, but just putting in the context of water. And by the way, those are the only 2 reservations in the state, and they're sovereign nations, so there is essentially compacts. They're not really, they're treated much like compacts, even though they're not called compacts, with those reservations, and so they have some reserved water rights that they own. And then there's some coal bed methane issues, based mainly in the the southern part of La Plata County. Coal bed methane being where the gas is extracted. Just real briefly, Colorado River Compact basically divided water between those lower basin states in that one colored picture and the upper basin, split it in half, even though if you look at it another way, we kind of got a little less water, but we won't go there. The La Plata River Compact splits water there again between New Mexico and Colorado. And then in the Upper Colorado River Compact took that upper portion, all those upper basin states, Colorado, Utah, Wyoming, and actually New Mexico, and it gave each one of them a percentage of the overall total that the upper basin states allocation. We ended up with 51 and some change % of the total amount. which is fair because we have the most coming from Colorado. That's what I'd say. Oh, and then the Animal Plata project, compact, which really just helps define how that project operates and gives authority to deliver Colorado water from a project in Colorado down to New Mexico. So it doesn't really affect anything more than that project. Competing interests within the basins, competing interests outside of the state, and here's competing interests from one side of the continental divide to the other. You can see the list here and all the arrows. Each one of those arrows is represented on this list, the average, essentially the average volumes that go from the western side of the continental divide to the eastern side. The Adams Tunnel, which essentially takes water over into the South Platte Basin, delivers about 231,000 acre feet from one side of the divide to the other. Here again, you can compare it to the amount that we have in McPhee. And so they're all up and down, but the one that's kind of odd is this one here, which is that San Juan Chama. It takes water out of some drainages that go into the San Juan, the Navajo, and the Blanco, and takes it over the Continental Divide, or actually through the Continental Divide in tunnels, and takes about 100,000 acre feet a year to the Chama drainage in New Mexico. That's the outlet. That's actually in the Chama drainage in New Mexico. It's called the Azoteo Tunnel. About 100,000 acre feet a year into New Mexico and into the Rio Grande Basin. And where does it go? Most of it ends up going down to Albuquerque. There's also some irrigation districts and whatnot. Santa Fe, some Indian reservations. They all share that 100,000 acre feet a year. What I'm going to do now is take it just a drill down just a little bit and tell you and show you how things developed in the Dolores Basin itself as water time went by. And this is not much different than, let's say, the Mancos. You could apply the same time frames for the most part to the Mancos, or many basins across all of Colorado. And there's diversity. You have the upper part of the basin, at the headwaters, you're up in the mountains, there isn't a whole lot of use, but on the lower end of the Dolores, you've got the slick rock, you've got a defined canyon. So most of the development's in the middle, but what you can see is there's some real diversity going on. And here's just kind of a general map that I'm going to work off of, showing the West Dolores, the Dolores, down through the town of Dolores, and through what ends up being McPhee, and then on up into the Canyonlands as it works its way around. So that just gives you a frame of reference. This is the exact same map that I'll be using. And so let's look at development through time. Well, I guess I threw in one more picture just to give you a reference. But pre-1879, the Dolores River essentially had no modern water development. There certainly was people in the area prior to this, and they were diverting, using water. But this for our discussion under the water rights system, there was no development. Pre-1885, most of the early water development occurred along the banks of the Dolores River in the form of small ditches, diverting less than 3 to 5 CFS, mostly for stock, irrigation, domestic purposes, that kind of thing. And only about 30 CFS was developed prior to 1885. Marty, I talked to Marty this morning. I couldn't remember, but you said it was the Sheik Ditch. So the Sheik Ditch was the number one. I should have asked Doug. Is that right, Doug? No, the number one is the Sheik.
Yes.
And about how much did they get to creed?
I think about
1.5 CFS, probably for a small irrigated plot. With 1879, I think that's what we found. 1879. Yeah, I think that's why I put it on the previous slide. Anyways, so the first guys out here doing a little irrigation were that, and then there's give me a couple more that probably were the early ones.
Berkshire Longwell.
Yeah. Dunham and Johnson and Dunham.
I'm sorry?
Dunham and Johnson, is that one of your?
Johnson.
Right.
Georgina.
Right. So that's what's in this period, and no surprise to anyone, I'm sure. Just to give another frame of reference, over on the Mancus, 5 years earlier, was it 1874? 74, the Giles Ditch was the first one over on the Mancus. So that was the start of theirs. It's a similar development. So these dots represent the locations of the points of diversions of the first irrigation ditches on the Dolores. So that's the 1879 to the 1885 time frame. And down on the bottom left, I'm going to put a legend. And it's going to build. And you'll see the top ones are going to be the most senior. The bottom ones are going to be the most junior. So what happened next in 1885? Brandon came along and developed the Montezuma Valley Irrigation Company, actually the predecessor, and got a large appropriation, 1,300 CFS, mainly for irrigation. They've developed a large portion of that, but anyways, they created the works that brought it into the McElmo and the Cortez, McElmo drainage and the Cortez area. So here we go. We've got the green dots from the prior appropriations, the seniors, and now you have a big one right in the middle of it. It's junior to those earlier ones, but taking water out the two locations. So, and on the left there again, here's our priority system building. From 1886, which is just after MBIC, up to about 39, there's more water development. Mainly it consists of medium-sized storage reservoirs that people are going to court for, saying, I want to put a reservoir here and put a reservoir there. There's also some more smaller irrigation ditches up and down the river, and then city of Cortez, town of Cortez at the time, got a little bit of a water right in there too. But that's essentially what was going on. And the total diversion, these are rough numbers, but the total diversion might have been about 600 plus CFS associated with all those water rights in that time, at that time frame. So, now we have another colored dots. You can see our expanding priority system. And 1940, the appropriation came for McPhee Reservoir. Now, McPhee Reservoir didn't exist, but they went to court and they said, we want to build a reservoir, just like those other ones. Some of those other earlier reservoirs weren't ever built at that time, but they went to court and said, this is our intentions. They got a conditional water right versus an absolute water right. After you perfect it, it's called an absolute water right. But McPhee, folks went to the water court and said, we're going to build this reservoir. Probably called it McPhee. I guess I don't know exactly what they're going to call it, but anyways, and they gave some amounts that they were going to appropriate, that they did appropriate. Water rights are a very public process. You have to notify people what your intentions are, and they can protest that if they want. So anyways, that's how it got this date, was that intention to appropriate it, going to court, making public notice, letting everyone come into the process and say yay or nay or this or that. Hard to say where it's going to come out in the end, but anyways, the appropriation date came about back in 1940. So now you can see we've got a water right on top of a water right. It's just the way it developed. So here we go again, building our legend on the bottom left, the water right system. In the 41 to 74 time frame, there was some additional appropriations. The largest one was just at that time was just the fish hatchery near Dolores, and then there was some smaller development of domestic and irrigation water rights as well. So we've got a few more dots. And by the way, each one of them has a priority within those dates. I'm just giving generalities there. And then this is the one that was kind of this oddity that concerned people, and rightfully so. It doesn't, it's a different kind of water right. In the early 70s, it might even in the late 60s, there was an establishment of in-stream water rights, in-stream flow water rights. And what that did is essentially give a water right to leave it in the river for a certain stretch. The idea was the preservation of the natural environment. In this area, it was given a water right of, I think it was 1974. Is that right, Doug? 75. Okay. So, anyways, they aren't any more mysterious than that. It's almost like there's a diversion here, and being diverted out of the river, only it stays in the river. They aren't any more senior than the date they were given. So all the water rights on here are not affected by that water right. Post 76, so 76 to present, most of the water right development has occurred. Now you're just getting some appropriations for some domestic uses, commercial uses, industrial uses. Most of them are small wells, there's springs, there's stuff up in the forest, and that kind of thing. Now these are so junior that they're going to get called out almost every year. In other words, the rivers run so low, there's no water to fulfill them. So Groundhog Reservoir, located high in the basin, has made arrangements with people to say, we will release water to augment, in other words, keep water in the river for the well that you have that would have affected the river. So that's the idea of the augmentation, and it works really well in this basin. So anyways, groundhog is kind of been a good thing to augment, to allow these very junior appropriations to continue. So there's, I think, the final picture. So you kind of got your priority dates with the colors and the legend, and I'm colorblind, but I think that might be red, the last one. But those are the appropriations, and you'll see them up and down the river that are essentially augmented. In other words, really wouldn't have much water if it weren't for groundhog supplying that water down the river to keep the river whole, so they're not affecting other people. That's all I had for people today, and I appreciate everyone's time and attention. Is there any questions that I can answer? Yeah.
Yeah, is it always the case that people get 100% of the water rights, seniors first, or do they ever, say, in extreme drought conditions, say, hey, we're going to cut back, everybody gets 75%, so that some of the juniors get some?
If a senior has a present need, and they can ask for their total decreed amount. It would be a voluntary thing if they wanted to cut back at all. And there's some issues there too, but there's nothing in state statute, state laws that says that they need to cut back or anything like that. That's what the priority system does, protects their full water right if they have that need.
Because I just anticipate in future decades, people when thereabouts start getting thirsty. I just wonder what the future is.
Sure. Well, you remember those compacts?
Yeah.
We have to live up to what those compacts say, and that could affect people in Colorado, but here's essentially how it would work. We've never been in that situation, and I wouldn't play an attorney on TV, but essentially what it would say is if we had to get more water down to the lower basin states because we owed it to them under that compact, we would essentially do the priority system in Colorado. In other words, the juniors would be taken off and wouldn't be able to divert because we owed it to the states downstream. Now, that's a very general idea of how this is going to work. Believe me, there's a lot of legal minds trying to figure that out because we may be up against it at some point. You know, I imagine we will be sometime. This year, who knows? But at some point we might. But that's the way I see it happening. There's still a prior appropriation system that exists, and so how that would play in, I don't know, but the most general scenario is the one I just described. Yeah. Anybody else have any questions? I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Rob. We really appreciate you being with us.
You bet.
Appreciate you. Next, we are going to turn to our panel, and I think they've kind of scattered out here somewhat. But what I would like is to go around and each one introduce themselves, tell us what they do, what they're associated with, and maybe just some information on their entity and any concerns or issues that they're facing at the time. And then after each one, maybe they could take questions while they're still fresh in your mind, and we'll go like that. And then afterwards, we can adjourn and just sort of mingle more casually. Oh, okay, and I guess there is a microphone, that we need to pass around.
Who's going first?
Why don't you?
I listed everybody up here with, by alphabetical order.
Oh,
It's not a hard order, but
Well, we can or we can't go in that order, but why don't we start with the name?
Well, I actually have a little PowerPoint presentation, so.
Oh,
Is that
okay.
part of my thing here? Is that what we're doing?
All right.
So is this only for your, it's only for you, right?
Yes.
It's only for the world and Facebook. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Elaine Chick. I am the program manager for the Water Information Program. I work out of the Southwestern Water Conservation District office. And I'm just going to go over a few things with you, the background, some of our issues, and how you can get involved with us. So the Water Information Program, we provide a balanced educational programming resources to the people of the San Juan and Dolores watersheds. Water Information Program serves as an unbiased forum to discuss water in Southwest Colorado. We've got 25 partners now, partner organizations in southwestern Colorado, from water districts, utilities, private stakeholders, and environmental advocates that make it possible. We couldn't do the program without some of our partners who are here today. We're so grateful for them. We cover all of the 9 districts that Southwestern Water Conservation does, and again, we are a service for the public. I'm very excited to say that we just launched our new website, which is going to be far more user-friendly. Each one of our partners has a page on it, as well as a link to their website, but it's also a wonderful resource. We've got links to all of the different water districts, information. If you don't know where to go, come and check out our website, it's waterinfo.org. I'll have this up in a minute. And it's meant to be a tool and a resource for the public. The program was created in 1994 by Southwestern Water Conservation District and various partners, and we have grown. There was only a handful before. Now we are up to 25 partners. And what we do, too, is we represent those partners. So when I go out to different festivals or water seminars, I have a booth, and we provide information to all of the people on the different partners that we have and who they could talk to for their different needs. If it's a ditch, if it's talking about water rights, I'm a human that they can actually call and speak with and try to provide information for them, and as well promote our partners. And we also promote water education and outreach, and we facilitate and partner with other entities in educational water workshops and seminars, which I'll go into in a little bit what we do. Each contributing partner occupies a seat on the WIP steering committee as well. It's a great forum for everybody to share information on what's going on with all of the different organizations, challenges, partnerships, and they're all invited to come to the meetings, which we have 3 times a year. Each partner contributes to the program based on their unique resources, ranging from a few $100s to a few $1,000, and Southwest Water Conservation District matches dollar for dollar, which helps this program exist. So these are our current partners, which is just an amazing group of people who help keep this program alive and in in turn, how I can help support each and every one of them to the public. So what does Water Information Program do? We produce and work with Southwest Conservation District on the Children's Annual Water Festival. This was our 24th year that we've done it. This year it's up at Fort Lewis College. It's free for all of the schools. I produce the entire thing with the help of our amazing volunteers who are the presenters, who are a lot of the different water agencies and groups who come to present to the kids. We had 750 fifth graders attend this year at Fort Lewis College, 34 classes and 29 different presenters. And a lot of it's hands-on, some of it's classroom, some of it's outdoors. It's an amazing program, and these kids do learn a lot, and we couldn't do it without our partners. The 12th annual, we're coming up to our Water 101-201 seminar. It's all about water law, water education. It's open to the public. It is also a continuing education course. There's continuing education credits for lawyers, city planners, and real estate agents, realtors, which is very important. And we have had some of you have actually presented. Thank you. And it's open to the public, and it's coming up September 18th and 19th this year. It's going to be held in Nukla. We're taking it out to the rural area. We take it to different areas every year, so we try to expand. It's also open to the public, and it's very reasonably priced. We have federal representation, state representation, and local representation that give information to people. So if anyone is interested in how water works, water law, water history, it is a great program to come to. And we have been blessed that for all of the years that we've done this, our keynote speaker is retired Supreme Court Justice Hobbs, who is the absolute aficionado on water and an amazing storyteller. We also partner with Mountain Studies Institute, as well as San Juan Mountain Association, in producing the annual Forest to Faucets teacher training program. This is another educational program for teachers. It's free for teachers. It's also an accredited program, and we bring teachers out for a 2-day program, and again, we go all around our different districts to do it, but we teach them how the water gets to the tap, from the watershed to the tap, and everything in between. So we get presenters who come out and talk about forest health. We go to the watersheds. This last year it was just out in Dolores, which was hugely successful. Thank you, Mike and your team. We had amazing feedback from the teachers. It's a grant program, we sponsor it. Southwestern Water Conservation District is a huge sponsor of it, amongst other people. And we put a kit together for the teachers to take back to the classroom so they get to experience the activities. And they're all, we also sponsored a book called My Water Comes from the South, from the San Juan Mountains. And it has statewide curricula in it that the teachers can take back to the classroom and teach the kids what they've learned hands-on. It's an amazing program. We also have brochures, magazines, and information pieces. I've brought some of them. They're in the back of the room. Please help yourself and take them. We have a learning library. It's a lending library, learning library in our office. We're in the West Building in Durango. Anybody can come in and check out books on water, videos. We've got over 200 listed right now of some amazing literature and videos and books that you can come and get. We do a speaker series, so I come to this to share what we do. I will also go around to different organizations. I also go down, meet with any of our partners' board of directors to talk about what their contribution does and what we are doing out there in the outreach programs and education to the general public. I write a monthly e-newsletter. If you would like to be on our newsletter, please come to me, you can sign up. We cover information, stories that are happening now of importance that are water related from the federal level, state level, local level, and then we have a listing of all the different events and conferences and things. It's a great resource if you want to be part of that. We have a water display, meaning that when I go to different conventions and seminars, we have a big display booth. And again, I bring all of the brochures and represent all of our partners there as well. And the new website. So it literally, we've had a fairly old dated website, had great information, but not that easy to use. I invite you to come and check out our new website. Just got launched yesterday, yay! And it was 6 months in the making, but great resource and information for anything that you want to know about. And we have a lot of quick links to a lot of other information. So have fun checking it out and playing on it. And so how can you get involved? We also participate, a great thing to engage in is with the 9 basin roundtables. We have a local one here. And basically all Coloradans are encouraged to participate in the Basin Roundtable process. They meet every 3 months. The next meeting is going to be October 10th at the Durango Public Library if you're interested in attending to hear more about what goes on there. And again, you can sign up for the Water Information Program from the newsletter here. And again, we're basically here to provide information to the public. It is free to the public. If you need magazines, brochures, information, I'm a resource. I also help support the High Desert Conservation District. They're one of our partners, as is Mike, and a lot of people here are. So anyway, that's what the Water Information Program is. Some people may know of us, and some people may not, but I definitely want to bring it to the public as a resource to use at your convenience. So does anybody have any questions? Great, well, thank you. Oh, yes.
I actually have a comment. I have a 5th grader that this year came to the water festival, and I have to say that I have 3 boys. It's hard to get them to talk about what they do in school. And for 2 weeks ahead of the water festival, my son gave me a sheet and said, you have to quiz me on these things every single day. And so at dinner time, it was water, 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 and he had a blast at the water festival. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, they get really excited, and we try to teach and educate things that really do engage. And the Water Wizard is the most popular at the water festival. And I work a lot with every teacher that comes. I speak to them individually. I give them a list of 100 different water questions that they get to study for a month prior to coming, and then every one of them gets an opportunity to have they're 20-minute sessions. There's over 395 breakout session spots that I coordinate. 20-minute sessions all day with 29 presenters. So the kids really have a great time. Thank you for that feedback. And thank you all for your attention. Appreciate it.
Who wants to?
Hello everyone. Get out that way. I'm David Hume, and I am the Water and Agricultural Officer for Montezuma County. My duties basically are to investigate and enforce issues, complaints, or violations, anything related to water and agriculture. And the way this whole thing started was about 9 or 10 years ago. A previous sheriff, which was Sheriff Wallace, some of you will remember, he was kind of a gentleman farmer, and we had farmers and cattlemen on our county council. So they all got together and said, we need to do something to protect our water rights and, our rights of our farming community. And that's how this position came about. And at the time when it was proposed, the sheriff was instructed that it will be a part of their permanent budget every year. They wanted it to remain and be enforced. We are the only agency in law enforcement in the state of Colorado that I am aware of that are actively enforcing these laws. And when it comes to anything related to agriculture, crops, livestock, fencing and easement, you name it, and of course water, which is the biggie, that's when I get the call. So I work directly with MVI and Brandon and Marty and Doug with Water Resources. Anytime there's an issue that's brought to them, if it's related to adjudicated water, Marty comes to me or calls me, and we huddle up to figure out where we have to go with it. With the shared water, the shares of water, with MVI, there's always issues because MVI only has to send it to the head gate. It goes downstream and I'm at the bottom of the hill. So I get all those problems. Yeah, I told Marty that Rob ought to have their shirts made with bullseyes on the back, but I get to go out with him and I'm like his hired gun. But we do get a significant number of water issues in this county. Everybody, whether they have, you know, shares of water or not, they will steal it. And this year with the drought, I've seen some of the most inventive ways to steal water that I've seen in all the years I've been doing this. It has also helped me with informants. People who have let their neighbors get away with it forever are calling me constantly to say, hey, you need to look at this issue. And one of the biggest problems I run into is people not being measured. And that's going to be a problem for years until we, you know, catch them one at a time. What we have done and what our sheriff presently is very pro is education to the community. We're not out there to be the bad guy every single time. We developed a booklet that's a ticket book, basically, but it's a warning citation. And on that warning citation, I have added the primary issues that I see on a daily basis. And at the bottom, I give instructions on how to cure the problem. I'll check that box. We'll give them a date, a reasonable time to cure the problem, and if they do, great. That generally has worked very well. This year, however, we're on a no tolerance policy and we're writing citations, unfortunately, right and left. But when I get a call and I come out, I could be dealing with any number of issues. The primary things I see are people taking water without having a measuring device. We're getting a lot of newbies into the area from out of state who have no clue about Colorado water law. And they see a ditch running through their property and they say, great, I got water, and the pump goes in. And that's, as most of you know, that's not the way it works. So I spend a lot of time educating people and I get a lot of cooperation, more so than not. But every so often you do get a stubborn person who doesn't want to listen and doesn't want to learn. I wrote one yesterday, it's going to cost him $2,750 when he gets to court. So he was warned numerous times and he's still, you know, an offender. But we work with other agencies. We've gone and spoken, as far as Marty and I, at conferences. The sheriff and I have gone to conferences. And right now we're actively and aggressively trying to get other agencies to do what we do. And Marty and I have been approached by Mesa County. Their enforcement agency does want their officers educated on that, and it has steamrolled into 5 surrounding areas and other agencies that are going to be attending. But Doug and Marty and I are going to be going up to Mesa County to teach those law enforcement officers how to protect the water rights, because it's critical. And we're trying to put together one for La Plata, Archuleta, and San Miguel. But being the only officer right now, well, I actually should take a step back. I'm training another officer who has great experience. He grew up with a lot of this, and he's learning very quickly. But when you have a county as large as ours at almost 2,200 square miles, and I'm the only one that does it, I do a lot of running around. And I do keep brochures and pamphlets in my vehicle, which I pass out, how to read their meters. A lot of times people don't know how to read their measuring device, and it's instructing them on how to properly read that. I carry these pamphlets that I will circle the code that they're violating, and then let them have that. They can read it and they'll understand what the terms are and what the penalties are. So, and it's diverse. I'm continually running into something that I say, wow, I haven't seen that one before, that's different. And Marty runs into some of the same kind of situations. But primarily what I'm out there to do is to protect all your water rights. I'm not, like I said earlier, I'm not out there to be the bad guy. But if it comes down to it, we will write the citation. In Marty's case, he has certain rights and responsibilities that he can perform and certain things he can't. When it comes to the enforcement issues, he'll call me and I'll step in and help him out. But that's primarily what we're doing, and it's been very successful ever since we started. It's gone down from the first month of the first year was 450 calls in that month. It's gone down to about 70 or 80. So we're making a dent in it. I also work with Mike and his people. I work with Joel and his people when needed. There have been a number of agencies, including the Army Corps of Engineers, which I use frequently. And I never know who's going to call, but I work with a lot of different people, and I'm perfectly available to anybody that wants to call.
We need more of you.
Well, this trip to Mesa is going to do that, hopefully. But the problem is it has to start at the top. The chief or the sheriff has to be on board with their guys enforcing it and actively take the time to do it. Because historically, law enforcement, they don't have a clue. And they'll say it's a civil matter. Well, it's not. So that's what we're looking to do.
Great.
Thank you.
So I'm Brandon Johnson, General Manager for MBIC, Montezuma Valley Irrigation. And I'll just start off with a little brief history and kind of where we're at and what we're doing. So here's Rob's slides up there. You see we was one of the oldest senior rights in Dolores River, 1885. It started out like that. They've done the tunnel through the mountain from Dolores River to the basin down here in Montezuma Valley. They had a main number 2 ditch that run to where the Great Cut Dike is now. Before that was there, it was just a main ditch, and it kind of peeled off from there, and it follows, our area follows County Road X all the way to the state line, Utah. And then as they started to develop their ditches back in the 1800s with horse and buggies in the 1900s, they made our other district line about 29. It goes a little bit over a little ways, but they couldn't figure out really how to get water on over the hill. So that took that all the way to the state line. And as you noticed, you know, we was here, MBI started, they brought the water to this area, then the people started coming. So one of the main ditches that comes through the tunnel split off into 3 directions. We call it the west lateral, east lateral, and the Highline ditch. And off of the east lateral, they had the Cortez lateral that took off from there, which brought the city of Cortez to where it exists now. The ditch kind of followed the terrain of 145, kind of, and then came down and actually went all the way down to Oak Street, Chestnut, down through where the end would drop into McElmo. So that's kind of what brought the city of Cortez. Once we got the water here, folks started moving in. They got close and started doing their diversions. As time went through, they figured, oh, we need some storage buckets. And on that other slide, a few years down, that's when they decided, well, we need to do like Narragansett. They had a few other future plans, like Dawson Lake, and a few things that didn't happen. And then they also developed groundhog for some buckets and supplies up there. And as things developed, everything started coming up online. And you need to remember, back in those days, it was all hand dug, horse, carts, dynamite maybe, stuff like that. You know, they're refurbishing the flume out here by the fairgrounds. There was no metal pipes. It was all made out of wood. We still have structures in our ditches now that's still wood. Like we got a couple, 2 flumes that we use, and check structures that's still wood. So as we progress and times change, more people come in. The Bureau helped build McPhee. Now, instead of a river, now we got the lake. Extend your season out. Various things change. Today we have 22 ditches we take care of. All those ditches take out shares except for 2, and I count the 2 that's up at Groundhog. Those are just 2 supply ditches that fill Groundhog. There's it's a mutual ditch company. It's owned by the shareholders. There's 284 shares in our company. All those folks own the company, and we deliver the water to the head gates. And this year is 133 years old that we've been operating. And basically that's it. Normally we, a full head's around 48 inches. Of course this year's a little bit short, but with some of the holdover storage of McPhee and different deals in our water rights, we're not a little bit more than half a head, but we're sticking with 40 inches. But you got to remember also this year we started almost a month early. Normally our season's April 15th, October 15th. We came online this year April 1, and it came up pretty steady, and we was at a full head by the 16th of April, and we have not shut down. Normally by this time, with cuttings, rains, we normally gradually slow down and whatever, but this year it's been full bore all the way. And presently, we've used a little over half of our water so far. So we're projecting with 2 more good months left, unless the rains change or the farmer cuts down. That's kind of where we stand today. Question?
So Brandon, you're thinking middle of September, maybe, for cutoff?
End of August, September.
Okay.
It depends on the rains and farmers. It kind of slows up as they continue.
Okay.
And the rains we have now, it's brought the river up a little bit, yes, but not near like what we need. Thanks.
I'll go ahead and go next just because Brandon and I are, so to speak, joined at the hip. Every drop of water that comes into the Montezuma Valley goes through McPhee Reservoir. As Brandon said, they're very senior water rights. It's what made it possible for us to build McPhee. This is a kind of a project map. They're back on the table if you want to, if you'd like a copy of this. I'm just going to hit some high points just in the interest of time. So this upper part, this is the watershed in the McPhee Reservoir. And I've also got some information on the back table about forest health, about our dwarf collaborative, because what we are starting to realize as water managers, yeah, we have our reservoir where we store the water and manage it, but all that water is coming off the national forest, and forests are in poor health. If you have a catastrophic wildfire event, it does a lot of damage to your reservoir. But even thinking positively, to the extent that we can restore health to the San Juan forest, we will get better water yields, and those water yields will end up in the Dolores River and the other streams in southwest Colorado. So that's a big emphasis up here. We talked a little bit about, so the river comes down. One of the things we do, Rob talked about augmentation. Well, if anybody that wanted to drill a well in the Dolores River Valley would be junior, they'd have to do their own plan of augmentation to drill a well. And so we were able to get a decree that allows us to, through water out of groundhog, released out of groundhog, or by exchanges in McPhee, to allow people, when they come in to drill a well, to purchase replacement water from the district, so they don't have to go through a plan of augmentation. The other I guess thing I would say about the project is once the water is in McPhee, one of our big challenges now is quagga mussels, an infectious critter that does long-term permanent damage to reservoirs. So if you're a boat user, you'll see our the inspection program. That's a 4-way cost share with Reclamation, Parks and Wildlife, DWCD, and I'm blanking on the fourth partner. But anyway, so we jointly try to keep the mussels out of McPhee Reservoir. The delivery system for the Dolores project, these are all new lands. This is all these irrigation blocks you see in white. That was dryland farm area where they were able to bring the infrastructure in and supply project water. Highly efficient system, pressurized. So that's, I was mentioning earlier, we really appreciate, we're trying to upgrade our efficiency and irrigation technology on farm to take full advantage of that pressurized water. This is the, the Dolores project is it. This is the Ute Mountain Ute farm around the toe of the Ute. If you've never seen it and you have a chance, it is worth the trip. There's 7,700 acres there. It was one of the things they gained out of the Colorado Ute Indian water rights settlement was this farm. And then they also got domestic water, all the commercial development you see on the highway, the casino, the truck stop, the hotel, all of that didn't used to be there because there was no potable water. All the expansion of the community was made possible. So no tribal water rights settlement, no Dolores project. I mean, the Dolores project was put on the Carter hit list in 1977, and the only reason it was brought off is because we were able to achieve one of the very early Indian water rights settlements. I guess the other thing I would say is that as you get through McPhee and then the Dolores River continues north, that's another huge responsibility that we are, and I don't think we need to put up that map, but anyway, we spend a lot of time working on the lower Dolores River. We do that collaboratively. We have a lot of people, a lot of partners, fortunately. We're really trying to do boating releases when we have excess water, and we're also trying to keep the river healthy down there. And again, we've got a committed group of people that are working on it. Yeah, this is you can see that Dolores, this is kind of worth taking a look at. Here's McPhee Reservoir. Here is, you're going through Gateway, and then the Dolores River is joined by the San Miguel and joins the Colorado River over here in Utah at Dewey Bridge. So we've got, we influence very heavily. I mean, we influence the river primarily to where the San Miguel comes in, because that doubles the flow in the Dolores River when the San Miguel comes in. So we spend a lot of time working on being able to fully use our water allocation, and at the same time do the best we can to provide recreation and to keep the river healthy downstream. So I think that's kind of my overview on the Dolores Water Conservancy District. Everybody you've heard from are our partners, and we love them all. And we need them all.
Thank you.
I'm Gary Kennedy, Superintendent for the Mancos Water Conservancy District. I operate and maintain Jackson Gulch Reservoir above Mancos. Jackson Gulch Reservoir is one of the 5 federal dams that are in the southwest here. Second to the oldest. It was built in the 40s, completed in 1949, has a capacity of 10,000 acre-feet of water. It is an off-river reservoir, meaning that we have to bring water in by canals from the river system to the reservoir, and then via canals back to the river system. One of our biggest problems today is aging infrastructure, which most of the federal projects are dealing with that today. And the biggest problem is funding federal, or the rehabilitation of these aging infrastructure. As an operator, maintenance of the project, we get no federal funding to do the repairs. It has to be funded locally, or if we can find grants or loans. Typically grants are the most difficult to find because we operate and maintain, we do not own the facilities. So when you're looking for grants, people say, do you own it? And you say no, they say, okay. So that's our biggest problem right now, is dealing with the aging infrastructure. We have roughly 250 water users on our project. We have 10,000 acre feet. Out of that, we have 8,500 acre feet is allocated to irrigation. Years like this, we have a 60% allotment, which isn't great, but it's a lot better than we've had in other years. We have had years that we've had 20% allotments. We supply water to the town of Mancos. We supply water to the rural community around Mancos, as well as Mesa Verde National Park gets their water through the project. We presently are looking at gaining title to the Mancos project. which means we have to go through legislation to get Congress to sign over the title. During that process, we have negotiations that would have to happen with Bureau of Reclamation, because there's roughly 20 to 25 contracts, special use contracts on the project with the federal government that the district would have to take over. There's also recreation on the project, and the recreational is state of Colorado, so that creates a big negotiations to try to get that completed. We do work close with the Division of Natural Resources on the Mancos River, as well as the Conservation District, to try to get measuring devices in and continue putting water into the river itself. So I don't know that I can add a whole lot more there. Any questions? Thank you.
Hi, my name is John McHenry. I'm Vice President of Summit Irrigation. I was a fifth-generation rancher. I followed my granddad, my great-granddad, on the board of Summit Irrigation, and so have a little bit of history, not near as much as the man that I was sitting next to. Dave Sanford was once our secretary and our historian, so he'll probably correct me as we go through some of this. Summit, our division is up Lost Canyon. If you ever had the time or the want to go up to it, you'd be amazed that we even get our water. The version is up there. It scales along the hillside. We continually have problems with rocks, mud, things dropping in. We're continually cleaning that just to get our water. Where 10 years ago we replaced our flume. That allowed us to transverse water from one hillside to another, which carries it over to Summit. Summit Reservoir is our main reservoir, roughly about 5,000 acre feet. We also have Hewitt, which is about 2,500 acre feet, and we have Joe Moore, which is about 500 acre feet. A lot of our problems are the same as Mancos, infrastructure. We're kindly, the money that we generate, we're just kind of band-aiding. We're kind of continually going. Myself and the board are continually looking to improve our system. We've looked at several options. It's just hard to come to fruition on some of it, as limited as we are. Example, this year, our irrigation season lasted 10 days. That essentially was to give our farmers and some people that have gardens enough to get about 10 days of water to get a chance to make things green. And for myself, it was to get over the fields a couple times and make green grass for the prairie dogs to have. With that being said, our seasons run generally from May 20th. That'd be our on date, and on an average timer in a good year, we'd be to August 10th. Kind of always remember that being Escalante days. Here lately, because of the dry years, we've been roughly around July 30th. But we've had seasons as long as when we could get a good monsoon where we could shut the system down. We've been able to stretch that out into almost September. So we kind of run it depending on how Mother Nature gives it to us. Dave, anything else you'd like to share or worth mentioning?
No, it's an old system, 1905, 1907, when those reservoirs were constructed. The original ditch was 1886, but they never filed on the water till the 1930s. So our appropriation is much later than our diversion date. 400 shares.
Yes, 400 shares. And the way our share system is different than MBI. It's roughly, give or take, 1 share of Summit is equal to 10 MBI. Any questions?
What's the update on the dam at Summit?
Just had a meeting on it the other day, so we're in discussions. We're in discussions. We're gathering information as we go right now. So, yeah. it's a, I guess all I can say, it's a process. We're trying to see where we go. It's just recently getting word of this, and it could be a $500,000 project, and you know, it's kind of a big shock as a system, and you know, you put in having to take care of something like that, and then where does the money come from? Just like how Mancos has to from it. So it's has to be done, or something has to be done, and somehow, some way, and so we're in discussions of how to do it. Any others? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Marty Robbins. I'm with the Division of Water Resources, Water District 32, the McCamel Creek Drainage. Basically what we did do is, as you've seen on that slide that Rob presented here just a little bit ago, we administer water rights by priority within that drainage, or my drainage, which is 32. The Mancos drainage is 34, 71, and 69 are the Dolores disappointment drainages. I have roughly about 1,500 water rights that I deal with, whether it be wells, reservoirs, springs, or direct diversions. So it keeps you hopping, and you learn a lot of land. Our position as water commissioners, we administer the water right into the ditch off the river. So on a year like this, down here at my last diversion, we were basically dry until we started having these rains. So occasionally we do get a call from the Navajo Nation downstream saying, where's the water in the creek? Well, I'm drying it up. It's basically all I can say to those individuals that are entitled to it. Things that we do, well permitting, reservoirs, ponds, permitting applications on reservoirs and ponds. Big reservoirs, anything over 10 feet in height, have to go through our dam safety engineer and division engineer. Basically anything less than that, us water commissioners look at and then pass it on to our division engineer for his approval. So everybody that's out here building ponds, everybody loves to build a pond. You need to go through a process to obtain that ability to put the hole in the ground and have a dam associated to it. We're the guys that everybody comes to with questions, so we do a lot of directing to Summit Irrigation, Mancos Conservancy, Brandon, or Dave Hume. So if you have questions on water rights, we're usually the individuals that can access the original decree. However, we do not go down the chain of ownership with that water right. We have the original applicant on paper, and then it kind of gets into a confusing mess after there. So we try to assist folks as much as we can, but we are very limited on what we can and cannot do as water commissioners. I believe that's about all I have to say. Is there any questions? Thank you.
I'm Paul White, and I'm with the USDA Farm Service Agency. I'm housed with Joel down at Interstate. We administer the federal farm programs under the farm laws. The current law that we're administering is the 2012, and it expires October 1st of this year, with Congress possibly enacting another law. I don't know the status of that, nor do I try to keep up on the new law. Several programs that we opportune on is disaster programs, insurance programs, loan programs for farmers and ranchers. Those programs are voluntary. That means you have to come in and make an application with us, and you have to meet the requirements and the eligibility rules of those particular programs. Currently ongoing with the situation with the water in this area, we are classified as a D4 drought. San Miguel, Dolores, Montezuma, La Plata, and Archuleta, all those counties are D4, have been D4 from a very early stage. Most came into effect in May, meeting the requirements of certain programs or disaster programs at that time. One that we have ongoing right now is called the Livestock Feed Program. It is for livestock in a operation of ranching or farming. It is, the eligibility on it is we're looking at cattle, sheep, equine, there's elk, alpacas, but they have to be in a farm situation, not a 4-H project, personal use, personal food. So therefore there is some questions that generally come up. Best example I can get is an outfitter who runs horses to going up on pack trips. He would not be eligible for the program. That's not considered a farm operation. It's based on corn, and we've estimated through USDA Farm Service Agency that it takes 8 pounds of corn to sustain an animal. So therefore, 8 pounds over 30 days comes out to possibly $20, and you get 60% on that for the animal, but you have to have pasture in relation to it, and thus we pay the lesser of between the two. I'm not getting into a lot of detail. It's a kind of complicated math issue, but you have to provide ownership, you have to provide risk to us, and you have to provide that you are a farm operation. The other program we currently got is handled under the Emergency Livestock Assistance Program, and it's water hauling for livestock. It's a money based on number of gallons per number of animals based on location. I'm taking applications right now. It's limited to 150 days from once it starts. So if the drought lasts longer than 150 days, it can't do much, and it's up to the person to come in and sign up for it, and their start date could be based on that time. We don't go back beyond on either program beyond April 30th in Montezuma County and May 1st on Dolores and San Miguel, because that's the beginning of our grazing season as established. We also have a loan program, emergency loans. Once the county has declared a disaster area due to drought, these loans are offered. They are for picking up pieces, say, my best example, and I'm no expert on the loans, but those loans are based on, the farmer has a land note, an operating note, a chattel note, and due to the drought conditions and everything, he's not going to be able to make his payments at the end of the year because of the drought conditions, because what he went through. He would come into us and make an application, and we cover those identifiable losses in a loan. The problem with it, the downside, not to be down on it too much, is the fact it's money on borrowed money is how it generally works. Because what it amounts to is the rancher can't make the payments that he's paying debt on, and now he's taking out a note to pay that debt. They run out, those notes generally run about 7 years. When we are lenders of first opportunity on the rest of our programs, but there are some real stringent guidelines to be eligible for. We look at beginning farmer, socially disadvantaged farmers, and such. Again, it's a qualifying deal as long as money holds out. There's other programs involved. The best way to know about them is I got some cards where you could sign up for what we call our e-newsletter. It's Gov Delivery is what we call it. You can get every county in the nation, every state in the nation's newsletter on the programs that FSA offers. It's a way to get the information you want. You can visit our website on programs. There's a whole gamut of programs in there. Probably the ones that everybody's used to is our loans, but we also have the Conservation Reserve Program. These are just Stella Hearts, but there's specific programs for specific areas in the nation. If you want any cards to sign up for these newsletters, I've got them here and I'll hand them out to you. If you got some questions on that water hauling or livestock feed, I got a couple of handouts I'm more than willing to share. And I thank the High Desert Conservation District for inviting me today. Any questions? Thank you. No, those are two different systems.
Okay, well, as we're finished, I would like to thank our guests and our speakers for coming today. We sure appreciate you. Appreciate everybody that showed up to hear about this. I guess in closing, I'd like to say that whether or not you feel you want to support the Conservation District, it's our hope that you will leave here today with maybe a more enhanced sense of conservation, not only in water, but soil health, trees, forests, food production, sustainability. And in saying that, and the caliber of the people here, I feel like I'm probably preaching to the choir. But thank you all for coming. We do appreciate you.
Yeah.